thinking of someone who can ask deep questions, who can ask questions that are at a really fundamental level, that get below the surface. And I found that enormously challenging, because it has seemed to me that very often, in relation to the city, but also in other areas of contemporary life, we spend a huge amount of time and invest an enormous amount of energy in things that are important, but we don't get to the underlying questions concerning purpose and meaning. And Eliot suggests that the stranger, whoever we're to regard the stranger as being, will ask us deep questions about the meaning of the city. As to the pictures, I'm really sorry that I can't project these, and all I can do is hold up a particular edition of the great artists. But you may have difficulty seeing them from where you are, so I'm going to have to describe them, maybe rather than expect you to see them. But you will immediately recognize, I think, the artist and probably the pictures. The artist is Edvard Munch, who was almost contemporary with Eliot. One is probably among the most famous iconic images of modern times, the Scream, in which a figure is crossing a bridge, emitting a terrible wail of pain and distress and a sense of lostness. The other, which hung beside the Scream and is clearly related to it, is entitled Anxiety. And here we have a group of clearly identifiable people, middle-class, urban people, on whose faces there is etched a very evident sense of anxiety. Thank you very much to my assistant. What's often overlooked is that in the Scream, Munch makes specific reference to the city. He says this: "One evening I was walking along a path, the city on one side, the fjord below. I felt tired and ill." And out of that experience, he paints this iconic image. And if you take the Scream and Anxiety together, they almost perfectly reflect problems that people felt were emerging in cities, European cities, at the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century. There are many indications that there were a whole series of psychological conditions, phobias, that suddenly emerged that had previously been unheard of. For example, the condition known as agoraphobia. And some people suggest that Munch himself suffered from this condition. And so as you come into the 20th century, you find people asking why, despite civilizational advances, despite progress, despite all the positive aspects of modern development, why are we so unhappy? Why is there this increasing incidence of these kinds of conditions, and people in large numbers going to clinics, particularly in Germany, in Scandinavia, in France, complaining of these conditions? And the question that was asked was, what is the relationship between these conditions and the city? Is the city the cause of this? And if so, what is it about urban life that creates this dis-ease? Is it physical? Is it something to do with the layout of the city? Is it the way in which the streets and the squares have been constructed that in some way they create this anxiety? Or is there a social cause? What is it about the city as we've known it around the turn of the 19th, 20th centuries that gave cause to these anxieties? I mentioned that my approach to this has been in terms of helping people to reflect who are involved in various forms of ministry. So obviously a large part of what I've been doing is on the one hand listening to sociologists, historians, a whole range of disciplines that can help us understand the city. And of course, on the other hand, from my perspective, to ask the question, what is the understanding of the city in the Bible? Is the Bible anti-urban? Is it essentially concerned with a society that was rural, traditional, pre-modern, and therefore, in our sense, pre-urban? Or is there help and guidance to us in the Bible in how to respond to the challenges of urban life and work in the city? Now, I'm not going to dwell on the story of the Bible, except to say this, that the city appears very early in the narrative of the Bible. It comes, of course, as some of you will know, in the famous story of Cain and Abel. So within the first few chapters of Genesis, you have the appearance of the first city. And some people have interpreted that story as suggesting that from the beginning, the Bible has a negative take on urban life. The story of Cain and Abel is the story of one brother murdering another. And it's Cain, the murderer, who is described as building the first city. And I'm not going to quote to you the people who've done this, but there's a very famous theological work with the title, The Meaning of the City. So it connects with Eliot's poem, which takes the Cain and Abel story as the foundation for its understanding of the city. The first city is built by a murderer. He's in flight from God. He doesn't want God's protection. He'll make his own protection. He'll create his own environment in which he doesn't need any help from outside. And so it's an extremely negative reading of that text, but it then becomes the lens through which the whole of the rest of the narrative of the Bible is read in relation to the city. And so we end up with a Christian view of the city that is profoundly negative.